Hi, this is another Ask Augustin. Today I'm going to talk about projection, by which I mean how to produce a sound that can carry in a large room or in a hall and be heard clearly. This is something that I've worked on for a long time. Of course, when we practice, we're generally in smaller rooms and we try to make it sound great where our ears are, and it can be quite difficult to then play for a larger room. It can feel like we're playing louder than the music should be, and it takes a lot of getting used to. As you play, you kind of listen to how loud the sound is and whether the sound comes back, and you kind of get a sense of whether you need to play more, and you take all of the nuances you're doing in the music, all of the expression you have, and play it at a high enough dynamic level and enunciate clearly enough so that it can be heard in a bigger hall. Of course, an obvious thing is the violin and the bow that you use have a huge impact on the projection. Some violins are louder than others and all of that. The condition of your instrument and how you maintain it also has a huge effect. If your strings are old and false, then they will not project as well. The position of the bridge, that it's straight enough. Of course, the sound post adjustment. If there are open seams on the violin, that's really bad for projection. If you're missing a lot of bow hairs, it's bad. The amount of rosin you use, if there's not enough rosin, or if there's too much rosin, or if it's important to not have too much residue. Those things all affect the way that the sound is produced and carries in the hall, and just how much sound there is. There are a couple of different technical things that affect projection. Maybe the most obvious is articulation, that when you're in a very, very large space, it can happen that you don't really hear the beginnings of notes. That things can kind of sound like wah, wah, wah a lot. That sometimes if you want things to be very clear and articulated, instead of playing, you might need to actually play with more of an attack at the start of the notes. One thing that helps with that is to play with full hair, to use the weight of your arm efficiently, and just pay attention to this little crunch at the start of notes, which you can produce from the string or by dropping the bow. These kinds of noises, which up close don't sound very beautiful, actually sound much softer from afar. This is actually an adjustment you have to make when you record, is that when the microphone is very close, then you want to do less of that. You don't really want to hit notes as hard as you would in a very large space when you're playing with a big orchestra. If you want to play with your fullest sound, it's very important that you pay attention that you're really playing legato when notes are under a slur. When you play them portato, you are actually stopping the vibrations of the violin and restarting them over and over again. And when you are far away, it will be noticeably softer. It has a noticeable effect on projection, because you're not allowing the violin to really sound at maximum volume, because you keep stopping and restarting the sound. So when you do want to play portato in a very, very loud passage, you're going to actually have to give extra emphasis on those notes to make up for the fact that portato is inherently slightly softer, inherently projects not as well as notes that are legato. The thing to realize is that it takes your violin a little bit to really ring at its fullest, loudest sound, and that anything you do to stop those vibrations and restart them is really going to affect your projection, especially from a distance. I mentioned in an earlier episode bow changes, that when I talked about smooth bow changes, that if you are going like this, then in terms of how your sound projects from afar, there's going to be a real dip in the sound, and actually the start of the upper will be hard to hear, because you actually stop the vibrations of the violin and start it again from nothing. But it's possible to change the bow, keeping the violin ringing constantly, and in that case the sound will keep going. The same is true when you play legato. Real legato, even though the pitches change within a slur, the volume of the sound stays the same. You have to realize that a physical piece of wood takes a little bit of time to really start ringing and to stop ringing. It's not instant. It's not like an instant on and off switch. It takes a little moment to get going. I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time.